Hey guys, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the new home of power mining analysis. In today's video, Anthony Power and I are going to be dissecting February production results from 6 of the top miners we cover on the channel. We've got a lot to go through in today's presentation, but before we do, take a second, hit the like button, you guys. It's a huge help to myself. Anthony loves it, and it helps get this content to other people like you who may find value. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join. We just crossed the 41,800 subscriber milestone, so we wanted to thank you all for your support, your comments, your encouragement. And with that being said, leave a comment in the section below, specifically if you're holding shares of one or all of these 6 miners. We'd love to hear your thoughts on February results and how they're positioning themselves heading into halving this April. Now with that being said, let's get into today's video. Okay guys, so that's right. Today's video, we've got a stacked agenda for you, a 6-pack of information. Anthony, do you have a 6-pack over there, Anthony?
7.
Oh, do you? Wow, coming along.
Brits were always one ahead of the Americans.
There you go. Well, we'll be sure to check that out when we get to Nashville. Back to the story here, Anthony. We've got February results out now from the majority of the miners. So today we're going to be going through 6 of them. We realize that's not our full list, you guys, so we will get our full February analysis video out in the next few days or next week or so here. But Anthony, we definitely wanted to cover this because there's some big news lines or big storylines, a lot going on in the Bitcoin space this week. So thanks for being back, and we'll get into it. Maybe start off with Bit Digital here.
Yeah, so Bit Digital announced they mined nearly 129 Bitcoin in the month of February. Now, bear in mind, February obviously a shorter month, 29 days this year. It's a leap year. We know that, and this will apply to all the miners producing, that the difficulty increased by over 10% in the month of February. So what does that mean for miners themselves? It means production is going to be affected because it takes longer to actually mine a Bitcoin when the difficulty increases. Therefore, you're using more power, and therefore it's costing you more as well to mine Bitcoin. So Bit Digital produced on nearly 129. They did manage to increase some of their hash rate during the month. So I think the hash rate went up just short of a quarter of an exahash. So they're now actively operating at 2.73 exahash throughout the month of February. They're also hodling the majority of their production as well. And so at the moment, they've got a total of 847, nearly 848 Bitcoin in their hodl. That's worth nearly $52 million. They've got a similar amount of Ethereum in their treasury. So you look at this company here, Bit Digital, and we've talked about them a lot. Very, very sound balance sheet, very little debt, have significant amount of crypto now in their treasury, over 100 million, have a cash reserve as well. It's all going well. Now, the one thing they added in February that they haven't had it before is the fact that they've starting to show their revenues for the artificial intelligence, for the HPC service that they're providing from Iceland. And so that we know from previous podcasts that they got a contract initially for 35 million a year. Then it was increased to 50 million a year. So when they announced a couple of weeks ago that they were going to start including these revenues in their monthly update, what was going through my head, I wanted to see a figure of 4 at least for February. And they've delivered 4 million in terms of revenue for February for that there. So, we've seen a lot of people saying the miners shouldn't be going out and pursuing these other types of businesses. They should be focused on Bitcoin mining. And, 6 months ago, I would probably have been in that group saying, focus on getting your hash rate up. But now looking at Bit Digital, I'm thinking they've done something that, that nobody else has done at the moment, and got a big partner in place and delivering a great contract there. And we're led to believe that actually there's potential for that contract to increase from 50 million to 100 million by the end of the year. So a company like the size of Bit Digital, bear in mind, they're trying to get their hash rate to 6 by the end of the year. And we've talked about sort of like the mid-tier miners trying to get to 10 and 20 by the end of the year. The challenge is, how do these smaller miners manage going through the halving? And these HPC contracts seem to be a way that the majority of them are looking at now. And they're data center managers, so they're in this business of managing data centers for Bitcoin mining. Now they're going to manage data centers for HPC services as well. And it's a really positive position to be in. So going into the halving, great balance sheet, strong balance sheet, growing their hash rate every month. So I think every couple of weeks we're seeing a new update. I think we've got Sam coming on the podcast tomorrow, so we'll be able to ask him even more questions, give us more of an insight as to what's happening, more of an understanding about the HPC contract. So we had him on, literally just over a month ago, and he gave us a great update then, and we're looking forward to having him back on the show tomorrow. So a good monthly update from Bit Digital, and it was expected as well.
Yeah, the big news line there was the HPC contract coming online and that non-correlated revenue stream going into the halving, Anthony. And I know you and I had talked about, okay, let's see $4 million a month run rate. Are they going to backload the contract? How's it going to shake out? They were able to deliver. As you alluded to, that could get up close to $8-9 million a month if they're able to get that contract up in the $100 million annual range. So really strong numbers there. The other thing you actually brought up that caught my eye was their Ethereum holding. And we're starting to see a lot of buzz now around Ethereum ETFs and Ethereum breaking out and new price targets. So that was interesting to me. I think the only miner we cover that has a strong Ethereum holding on their balance sheet. So I'm glad you brought that one up as well, Anthony. Now,
and also, they're not only just holding Ethereum, they're actually staking Ethereum.
Yeah.
So they've got $52 million of Ethereum on they actually got a bigger Ethereum hodl than they have a Bitcoin hodl at the moment. So, those two together, you're talking close to 105 million in cryptocurrency in the treasury. But they're staking their Ethereum holdings and they're getting rewards every month to increase that. And they know that, once the Ethereum ETF, like the Bitcoin ETF, was approved in January, there's potential to see Ethereum also increase significantly. And it has, to be honest with you, it has pretty much kept pace with Bitcoin these last few months anyway. So, Ethereum's getting close to, $4,000 a coin. And so we've not seen them sort of numbers for at least a few years. So all very positive for Bit Digital. Really good update.
Totally. I'm staking my Ethereum too, Anthony. The problem is I only have half an Ether or half a coin, so it's not quite as lucrative as Sam and team's staking endeavors. Now, next up, this is one that we've been hearing a lot of buzz about, the top performing miner of 2023, none other than CORZ Scientific. So despite their market cap, Anthony, they're really one of the top 4 miners right now in terms of the overall size of the company, number of coins they're bringing in per month. So really excited to get into this one. What are your thoughts on CORZ Scientific?
Yeah, I mean, we had a conversation in December. I'll take you back to that. I mean, we had the record production from a North American miner in the likes of Marathon Digital, over 1,800 Bitcoin. And the only question we asked ourselves after that, at the end of that update, was, would they be able to sustain that sort of level of production going into 2024? Well, we saw in January, Marathon dropped like 42%. And what we've seen in February is they've dropped even further. They've still got these energy issues at some of their sites, although I believe they're coming back online now, but they've still got some issues at some of the sites. Their utilization for the month was around about 60%. So, but CORZ Scientific have pretty much, and when we talk about performance in 2023, I think you're alluding to the share price performance in 2023, which outperformed literally every miner. But we've articulated, when your share price gets down to 4 cents, there's only one way to go from there, and that's up, because you've literally hit rock bottom. So, shares been performing well over the last few days where other mining stocks haven't been performing. So I think people are paying a closer attention to CORZ Scientific. I know they were talked about. I went to a few conferences last year. I went to Bitcoin Abu Dhabi, to Dubai and to Amsterdam, and I know that some of the some of the key people there in the mining space were talking about CORZ Scientific. So I certainly made people aware through my X and through various social media platforms that keep an eye on CORZ Scientific, do some due diligence. And so in the month of February itself, they produced 893 Bitcoin. So they outperformed Marathon by nearly sort of 7 or 8%. So a good month for them. They performed. They mined the most Bitcoin in 2023 of all the miners, even though Marathon had a great December. So we know that they're consistently get good daily production numbers. They've got a hosting business as well. So the hosting business is 6.2 exahash. That's about that's a size of a bit smaller than the likes of Bitfarms or an IREN. So they've got a hosting business of a significant size in terms, and at the moment they're growing, having come out of Chapter 11 and starting to sort of to grow now. They've got some plans to bring in more machines. Some of the S21s will come in and throughout this year now, and they've been paid for, and so we'll see that efficiency coming down from the miner itself. So again, mining efficiency just under 27. You're looking at an average of 35 in the space. So there's only probably Marathon and Riot and CleanSpark who've got greater efficiency in terms of the fleet of miners and CORZ Scientific. So they're in that sort of bracket there. They deserve to be in the sort of the tier 1 bracket, because production wise they're constantly in those top 2. It's a good update. Then obviously they're selling their Bitcoin on a daily basis. We don't know if they've got a hodl, because every month we sort of see how many coins they mine. So in January they mined 1,027 coins, and they sold 1,114 coins, and then in February they've produced 893 and sold 952. So they're selling more than their actual production, which suggests they've actually got some hodl of Bitcoin in the treasury. But I don't know what that amount is. They don't. Not all the miners all the time give that information out. I know some of the miners last year didn't issue it on a few months, because maybe they'd sold some and they didn't want to make that known to to the retail market. But I've always suggested that Core would be selling theirs on a daily basis, going through Chapter 11 to pay the bills effectively. But no, 893 top Bitcoin performance for the month, and yeah, good update.
Now, I'll be curious to see, Anthony, how the Marathon fans respond, as we're starting to see Marathon maybe fall from grace here a little bit. I've also heard whispers that CleanSpark's outperforming in the month of March already in terms of Bitcoin being mined as well. So let us know down below, Marathon fans, what we're missing here, and we'd be happy to get Fred Thiel back on the channel and hear right from leadership as well. Fred, if you'd like to come on. Now, Anthony, I disagree with one thing you said there. You said when your share price goes down to 4 cents, there's only one direction it can go. And I would say, no, there's 2 directions it can go. And CORZ, really a testament to the team this year, was able to obviously take that a favorable direction for shareholders. And yeah, when you're trading at 4 cents and now you get back on the NASDAQ, obviously that's very good for shareholders. Now, Anthony, the next one, you talked about this in our prior video, DMG blockchain. So this is one near and dear to my heart. They mine in British Columbia, which is here in Canada. Christina Lake, my neighbor, has a cottage there. It's a beautiful place. So I'm looking forward to getting out there, but this is another great story. I love that we cover them on the channel. DMG blockchain, they're going through a lot of upgrades at their facility. They're really involved actively in the immersion cooling space. We just heard from Jason Less and Riot the benefits of immersion, or at least what they feel are the benefits at their facility. Corsicana coming online. So DMG, much smaller, but using the same immersion technology in Christina Lake here. What were your thoughts about them for the month of February?
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about immersion cooling, Sheldon was one of the first miners to actually do some testing with immersion cooling quite a few years ago, and they actually did a paper, a study on the actual use of it, and shared that with other mining companies. So, they were sort of like one of the first miners to actually test that technology. Again, in the sort of they're in that sort of one of the smaller miners that we have on the platform. And around about 1 exahash of operating hash rate. We know that they've got an order coming through for 4,500 T21 miners, and they expect half of those to come in actual March now. So that'll be well received when they come in, because that'll from a halving perspective, that brings your efficiency down, and also means that you're producing Bitcoin at a cheaper price. For the month of February, they mined just under 50 Bitcoin, so 49.3 Bitcoin. They've got 1 exahash of operational hash rate, so it does fluctuate sort of like between 0.9 and 1.1 exahash. So they've put in there the realized hash rate that they achieved during the month. They've had some issues with electricity at the site. I don't know if it's impacted February as it did impact January and December, but it looks like they're back there. And actually, I think from an early point of view, they might be sort of like in terms of production for the month towards the top of the table for the month of February. Not all the results are out yet, but like SATO, DMG, again a small miner, but had a good month for February itself. They've hodled. They've got a hodl about 454 Bitcoin. So they've they sold their production plus another, I think 12 or 14 Bitcoin, because I think they had 468 Bitcoin as at the end of January. So they've sold an extra 14 Bitcoin on top of their production. So that's something like 63 Bitcoin in total they sold. But they've still got a good amount of Bitcoin there. And at today's price, that's well over $20 million of treasury Bitcoin available there if an opportunity arises going into the halving. So I think they're in a good place. Their results came out recently. They had a positive update on their results. So they're one of the smaller miners, but they're showing that they can get the latest machines in there, increase their efficiency. They're going down the immersion cooling. We spoke to Jason the other day. He's going to light up Corsicana, a 1 gigawatt site with immersion cooling. Well, DMG aren't Riot platforms, but they're doing things in a similar way and growing their business using that technology. And it'd be interesting to see if they can maintain this level in the charts for their production going forward.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. This is definitely one that I'm rooting for. As you said, strong balance sheet and literally getting stronger by the day as we see the price of Bitcoin going up. So I can only imagine, Anthony, I know I check my phone about 500 times a day to see the Bitcoin price. I'm sure these CEOs are out there pretty anxiously awaiting the end of day results as well. Now, the next miner I want to talk about here, they've also had some operational challenges last year. Hut 8 Corporation, they went through that big merger with US BTC. We saw the leadership change. So Jamie no longer at the helm there, and we now have Asher taking her place. And then just today, they also announced they're decommissioning their Drumheller, Alberta site, so the province I live in. They're moving some of the more viable rigs over to Medicine Hat, Alberta. And then I think anything over 38 joules per terahash was the cutoff. Those are now considered kind of end of life, and they'll be retiring those units. So obviously a lot of controversy in the comments about Hut 8. There's the bulls, there's the bears, but definitely a lot of things happening since Asher's taken the helm here, Anthony. What do you think of these updates from Hut 8?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like they're making some decisions now on strategy. Looking at what they can utilize. I mean, if you look at what they've produced in February, I mean, bear in mind their production for the majority of 2023 was very poor, and they had a number of issues in some of their sites in Canada. They had electricity failures, they had issues with energy providers, and so they weren't able to operate anywhere near what the hash rate was. Their total hash rate plugged in. They weren't operating at even half that hash rate. So it was a challenging time. Since the merger, the production numbers have actually started to improve. They're not quite there where some of their peer miners are, but we are seeing month by month improvement. They've got 7.2 exahash of self-mining. They produced 292 Bitcoin. When you compare to January, they had 9,116 Bitcoin on the balance sheet. They've now got 9,110. So that suggests to me they sold 6 more than their actual production for February. So they're not really at the moment going in and utilizing that hodl to sell that hodl for other things, because that was something that came out in one of their updates, and the fact that if the right opportunity came along, they would now look at utilizing the HODL balance. And bear in mind that HODL balance is something like 500 million now in terms of value as at today's prices. So that's a significant HODL in their treasury going forward, and that will give them umpteen opportunities should they arise to take advantage of going into the halving. You operate in 3 different areas. So we've talked about self-mining. They've got 7.2 exahash. They also do hosting, and they've got 8.7 exahash in hosting. And that hosting number actually increased from January. So they took on more management of hosting in the last month. So they're operating at 8.7 there. But their biggest area is the managed services area, and they actually provide services for 23.4 exahash, and that's significant. So at the moment they're managing 2 of the sites for Marathon. Now we know that Marathon have given them notice on those sites, so that will end at the end of April. And HUT received a payment of over 13 million as a sort of like early termination clause. So that money was effectively 1 more year's managed services for Marathon. So and then straight away they've gone out and they've got a contract with Ionic, and we saw in their update for February that they're now commencing the installation of the specialized software and transition systems across those 4 locations in Texas, which is got a total of about 87 megawatts. And it's just like one door closes but another one's open straight away. So it looks like they're starting to deliver on some of the promises. I think Asher said, don't judge us in the first 2 quarters of 2024. Start looking at us closely from the 3rd quarter when we've got these things in place. And we're just starting to see a few green shoots coming through. I know there's a lot of this, with the retail investment side at the moment like that. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, HUT were a fan favourite. HUT were sort of like, you talked of HUT as one of the top 3 stocks that people had in their portfolios. And that sort of changed in the last couple of years. Well, now with their sort of like market capitalization, investors should be looking at the fact that they've got a 500 million, treasury position in Bitcoin alone, and they've got significant hosting facilities and self-mining facilities and a managed service that delivers. And they've also got a HPC contract as well, because they bought 5 data centers, nearly 2 years ago. And so they've got, lots of different revenue streams coming through. So we look forward to seeing their financial update in the terms of that it will start highlighting the other revenue streams. We know what HUT did before. We weren't, because US BTC were a private company, we didn't have as much information on those. But when we see the whole picture coming forward, that's going to be of interest to a lot of shareholders to see what the potential is in this. And their market capitalization has dropped, in recent months because of some of the news updates and that's affected every miner, believe you me. But it'd be interesting to see where the value now is, and there might be some value in HUT 8 going forward, certainly at the levels it is at the moment. But an update that shows they are progressing, not where they want to be, but it's slowly getting there. And all we want to see that improvement month by month. And it looks like with Asher at the helm now, they're starting to make some decisions to do that. And let's see how it goes going forward.
Yeah, and honestly, Anthony, if we've learned anything from Core Scientific last year, it's never to count out a company that's had a rough go. And I agree. I think there is starting to become some value in HUT, especially with that massive hodl and the price of Bitcoin. It's really hard to discredit them or count them out. Again, as you alluded to, a lot of possibilities going into the halving with $500 million worth of Bitcoin on your balance sheet. So great update there. I agree with you. Asher is definitely starting to make some moves as the new leader, and we'd love to get him back on here to talk through that strategy. Now, next up, we have IREN. So this was formerly known as Iris Energy. They've now rebranded the company to align with their ticker. So if you're not holding shares of IREN, that's the ticker symbol as well, IREN. Good update from them this month, Anthony. This is another one I've been starting to hear a ton of chatter about on X. A lot of the retail community is really starting to feel there's some value in IREN and looking to make some trades on this company.
Yeah, I've noticed that too, and I did a sort of like I reached out to a large group of shareholders on social media, and I did a poll and they sort of came back neck and neck with CleanSpark in terms of which stock was the top 3 stocks in most people's portfolios. So them and CleanSpark and Bitfarms were the top 3 out of all the mining stocks. So that shows just where they've come from over the last couple of years. They're gaining momentum. I mean, you've got to look at, IREN when you compare to other miners from a value perspective. I mean, they achieved 7 exahash at the end of February there, so they've now reached that magic number there. They're due to get to 10 exahash by the end of June, so that's halfway through 2024, with an ambitious target to even double that by the end of the year and get to 20 exahash. Now, they have machine orders in to get to 11 exahash, and they have options for a further 9 exahash to get that magic 20 total by the end of the year. Put them into that group then, sort of like, with Bitfarms chasing CleanSpark and Riot platforms at that point in time. So so in the month of February itself, they mined 310 Bitcoin. Good thing about what IREN do on their updates is they actually tell you what the actual electricity cost. And so interestingly, if we look at what the cost of mining a Bitcoin was in February from electricity cost perspective, it was just over $20,000. And in January 2024, it was $18,700. And in December, it was just under 15,000. So what we've seen there is we've seen the price of energy increasing. And that's increasing because the difficulty level's increasing through all those 3 months. The difficulty to mine a Bitcoin increased by 10%, as we alluded to at the start of the podcast. And that means that, not only is it going to affect your production, but it actually means that you're spending more energy trying to chase that next number in the cycle to get that block reward. And so this is like highlighting, how that difficulty works. The positive side, though, is that, revenues in December were 43,000 on average for every coin they sold, and they sell on a daily basis. In January, it was just over 42,000, but in February, it's over 49,000 a coin. So that was a much needed, boost in energy. And you're sort of like talking, heading towards, 8-9% increase in revenue. So that gets them close to where that difficulty has affected the company. But the energy price is a concern, and the fact that Iris are highlighting this, and some other companies aren't, this is something that, you can start to expect when their results come through for the first quarter of 2024. They've also going full into their high performance computing business. And so they've now signed with Poolside AI, and they're expanding that HPC agreement to 816 NVIDIA H100 GPUs. And that'll be, happening sort of later on in 2024. And as you rightly said at the start of this, they've just rebranded themselves to IREN from Iris Energy. And so people need to just get that new title fixed in their heads rather than keep referring to the other title. But it'll take a while. I've made a few Iris Energy comments in the last few podcasts. So I'm trying to do my best to mention it as the new branded name. But as we know from IREN. Stop there. We know from IREN that they are a top 4 performer month in, month out. So they're up there with the likes of Bitfarms, the likes of Hive, the likes of CleanSpark, the likes of SATO. So another good month for them. It's a good update.
Yeah, the new name change wasn't a problem for me, Anthony. I normally call all these companies by their ticker symbol anyways, so that one wasn't too bad. Now, question for Dan Roberts when he comes back on the channel. I know he's been an adamant sell every day proponent here, and he's actually come out and said it's a disservice to shareholders to be holding Bitcoin on the balance sheet. Now, in light of some of the performance of companies like MicroStrategy and the appreciation of Bitcoin, I'm curious to get Dan's thoughts if he still thinks that's the best approach heading into this bull cycle. So you guys, if you're holding shares of IREN, let me know in the comment section below. Do you still support the daily selling of the Bitcoin, or do you think they should start to get some sort of a hodl going here as we're now reaching all-time highs or close to? Now, last but not least, by any means, we've got Riot Platforms. So we just had Jason Less on, Anthony, about an hour-long interview. I was really pleased with his results. very transparent. They've come out of a rough year as well. Not a lot of growth in terms of exahash. They've now got Corsicana on the horizon within the near future here. Really the holy grail of Bitcoin mining and Bitcoin mining facilities. Jason actually offered us a trip down there to check out the facility, so I can't wait for that, Anthony. But what is your thought about Riot kicking off the second month of 2024? Do you think they're going to regain that status as one of the top miners in terms of overall production this year?
I do. And I do on the grounds of what Jason said in the podcast itself. It's not about judging what's happened this last 12 months, and he sort of came clean on some of the issues of the mining machine's performance, some of the obviously the issues they had with buildings F and G, caused by the weather storm at the end of 2022. So they've had some issues affecting them. One thing we have to mention about Riot in terms of their hash rate, they always put their full hash rate on their operational updates, on their monthly updates. So, you know, they've been articulating 12.4 exahash for quite a number of months, knowing full well they're operating nowhere near 12.4 exahash. And if you look at all the other mining updates now, pretty much all of them, with the exception of, a couple of miners, but the great majority of now also include an operational hash rate to show that, you know, there's been some curtailment, there's been some downtime. Hut are another one that don't show this, and therefore when you look at the monthly tables, take that into account, because if these miners were putting their operational hash rate, they'd be a lot further up the tables when they're at the moment. So that was a point that Jason mentioned. They want to be judged on hash rate, not on operational hash rate. So they've got 12.4 exahash plugged in. That's what they want to be judged on. So he was very open and transparent about that.
And Anthony, just to jump in there, I personally support that view as well. I think it's nice to hold yourself to the highest possible standard. So when Jason talked through that, we had offered, hey, do you guys want to start putting out an operational hash rate as well? He did sound like he's open to that, but I do like the strategy of, hey, if we have 12.4 exahash worth of machines in our facilities or in our possession, that's the number that we want to be held to. So I just wanted to throw that in, Anthony, because it does obviously almost hurt them, I guess, on those monthly rankings when it's not necessarily apples to apples comparison, hey?
It does, and I think the issue that shareholders had with Riot is it's not having that update to explain that, but by coming on the podcast and being asked those sort of a few challenging questions, I think, which we tried to get across to Jason, he came out there and fair play to him, he answered them openly and honestly. And the bit I liked, and when you asked me about, you know, where do I see them this year, they're tier one miner. End of. I mean, you know, the site at Corsicana, we're starting to see pictures now of the actual buildings being completed and the actual immersion technology being installed in those buildings. And so they've learned a lot from the last sort of 2 years of using their immersion at the Rockdale facility, and hopefully they've learned enough that, you know, they can get the Corsicana site up and running and have limited issues there. And what they're going to do at Rockdale itself is they're going to replace a significant number of miners over this next few months. So they want to get to sort of like 15 exahash at the Rockdale facility by middle of this year. And at the same time, they're going to start energizing their first part of their Corsicana site. So they're going to get to that, hopefully that gets that 20 exahash in the way they stated by the middle of the year. And then we'll start seeing what their production is like from the new facility and Rockdale, where they've replaced some of these underperforming miners. So I think, you know, I was pleased with that he was able to come out and talk about, you know, what's happening in the future. They're constantly looking at growing. So, you know, they talked about 38 exahash during 2025, but they're not even stopping there. They've got potential orders to go, you know, 100 exahash from where they are at the moment. So, you know, that's the biggest growth target of any of the miners. And it is a growth war out there for some of these miners. The gap's getting bigger between the top tier miners and the bottom tier miners, and the likes of Riot, the likes of Marathon, the likes of CleanSpark, and have been able to raise funds using their at-the-market offerings significantly. Marathon are selling shares, as we speak, to bring in more cash. Their cash balance went up close to $500 million in February, and this is after they've announced their results and what they had on the cash balance at the date of the results. So they're still selling shares now to build that war chest for when the halving occurs and maybe some opportunities there. But I think Riot, he's come out and said what's happened in 2023, why the production's down. And bear in mind, February's total of 418 Bitcoin, it was nowhere near where it should have been. I mean, CleanSpark managed, well over 648, I think it was, Bitcoin with a similar hash rate to Riot. So one thing that they did do this month, though, they didn't sell any of their production. So they've added to their hodl, and they've got over 8,000 coins. So again, at today's prices, that's $500 million in terms of treasury for Bitcoin, and they've got about another 500 million in cash reserves as well. So they've hit that magic billion in the same way Marathon Digital have. They also managed to curtail in February and achieve $1 million in power credits and another couple of 100,000 in demand response credits. And again, people were questioning Jason, is it worth turning the machines off when you've got a PPA? And he articulated the answer to that, and he articulated the fact that they do everything they do is to bring the price down, get the return on investment, and quoting the fact that they've been able to mine Bitcoin at just over 2 cents a kilowatt hour, which for me is probably some of the cheapest energy, average energy prices that any of the miners in North America have achieved. So there were some real positives come out of that podcast. Yes, we were expecting an update like this, but I expect the updates from April, May, June going into that half year to be a lot better as they start replacing these underperforming miners and start energizing the first phase of Corsicana. So look forward to hearing those, updates when they come out and get to where people's expectation where they should be. Because really, 4 months ago, Riot had the highest market capitalization of all the North American miners, and they're just dropping a little bit behind Marathon. They're sort of on a par with CleanSpark at the moment. So I'm sure there'll be some sort of bragging rights as we go through month by month and look at the comparisons between those three miners. But they are effectively now forming, in terms of market capitalization, a gap between them and the rest, to be honest with you, because the next highest market capitalization, I think we're sort of like just over $1 billion or just under $1 billion then, and you've got the likes of Bitdeer, Bitfarms, Cipher Mining, just around that, getting close to that billion mark. But these three are well over 3 billion each at the moment, with Marathon, literally double that amount at close to 6 billion. But not a great update, but one we expected, and one we'll be monitoring now going forward to make sure that future updates start to see that improvement, as Jason articulated in the podcast.
Yeah, kind of a similar tune from Jason and Asher saying, hey, we're not through the woods yet, but we expect brighter days ahead, and give us a little bit more time or a couple more months to really push that through to fruition. And now with Marathon struggling a little bit here, Riot still struggling to really get back on track, CleanSpark has a great opportunity to really shine front and center here this month or this quarter, Anthony. So again, really exciting times, a lot of companies to keep track of, you guys. There's the update on the big six today: Bit Digital, Core Scientific, DMG Blockchain, HUD 8, IREN, and of course Riot Platforms. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below, specifically if you're holding any or all of these 6 miners. What were your thoughts on February results? If you're still watching, hit the like button. It's a huge help to myself. Anthony loves it. It helps get this content to other people who may find value. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, McNallie Money, feel free to join. Anthony and I also share all of our live trades on Patreon as well, so make sure you check that out. Anthony, thanks for your time today. We'll see you soon, buddy.
Catch you soon. Take care, mate.